Hey there! So today we have another review. This is a beer from Barrel of Monks and is what's it called Single in Havana. So this is a blonde ale brewed with guava. So made out of Boca Raton. I had a pretty tasty wheat beer from them. They are a Belgian style brewery out of Florida, so it's pretty cool. Does this count as a Belgian style beer? I mean, guava is obviously not native to Belgium, but they call it single in Havana. So I'm curious if it is a sort of take on Belgian single, which is like a tiny Belgian blonde, versus like American blonde. Yeah, but I assume it's Belgian, right? That would make sense. This beer comes in. Oh yeah, what did I say? So single in Havana marries a clean, crisp blonde ale. So I guess it's really going for American blonde ales, not even Belgian style, with tropical, guava, blah blah. Dry and refreshing, 4.5%. So tiny beer, well, not a big beer at all. So this is, I guess, their take on more like sort of accessible beer. I can't imagine 2023 a Belgian only focused brewery does very well. A great example of that would be like Lost Abbey. We know what happened to them with the shrinking down. Omegang transitioning to hazy IPAs and also probably shrinking down production, all that stuff. So the beer comes in a really nice kind of just a light gold color, a little bit of like light haze to it. Oh yeah. On the aroma, that is all cheetah fruit, a lot of guava, tropical, tart, sweet, quite nice. You also get a nice kind of like light, kind of like crackery malt on this. Sort of sells a little bit of the base beer, but it is quite cheetah fruit forward. Like it's very exotic and aromatic, and again, cheetah fruit. Yeah, it actually smells really good. I'm trying to think, like, I imagine like a really like tasty kind of like lemonade or like iced tea, like a guava iced tea, whatever they use to make that flavor. Like it's just like very like punchy, right? Yeah, that reminds me of like you go to like a fancy, like I guess Panera is sort of an example, but like there's just some like I don't know if you know also Cava, but there's some places that do like fancy iced teas and those like right next to the soda machine, and they do like pomegranate flavor this and acai that and blueberry flavor this, and I don't know whatever you call it, but it smells pretty nice. Okay, wow. So the funny thing is that when you smell stuff like that, I guess we've sort of been tricked into thinking that like fruity necessitates acidity, right? Like we always think of fruity sours, right? Like everything's a fruited sour, a blank sour, right? Like guava sour. Like if I had a game show, like first thing you think of like guava sour, like that's the first word you think of. You don't really think guava blonde, and so that's what hits on the palate. It really is a clean, crisp, light blonde ale. Very plain, very straightforward. The closest thing to like I guess a lager that a lot of breweries make. On the palate, that is a really weird kind of orthonasal and retronasal kind of experience. What I'm trying to say here is that what you smell is not necessarily what you taste, because generally that should be the case, right? The retronasal is what you smell, and the orthonasal is like what you put in your mouth, and then a lot like most of the flavor you actually get from something is actually from that interaction of something hitting the back of your. So like I don't know, somewhere here is where like your taste is actually hitting between your nose and your mouth, right? That's the orthonasal kind of like interaction. This one here, it smelled so fruity and tart and refreshing. And then on palate, you just get really just a light, plain kind of blonde ale. Sort of has this macro kind of vibe to it, right? Like this is the kind of beer that like, what's a great example? Like Boulevard Unfiltered Wheat, Spotted Cow. These are beers that like, they're like macro adjacent, right? Like they're still craft beers and like they call it blonde ale, what do you want to call it, cream ale, whatever you want to call it. But they get close enough to macro lager that like you're like, all right, like you'll get trick some people into like, or not trick, but like you'll get some people like, all right, I'm down, whatever, like I'll drink that, I'm cool with that, So really, the guava whispers on the back end, but it really is just a blank slate of crackery malt, a little bit of graininess. I almost get a little bit of tannin expression. So that could be like, over extraction and mash temperature issues, pH issues, blah, 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 blah. Like a tannic kind of grainy character. No bitterness to speak of, no hops to speak of. Just really blank state, pale malt thing going on. Again, the closest adjacent. Like, again, a lot of craft breweries do a blonde ale because the lager, it's an ale fermentation. Turnover time's like, half or a third compared to lager. So if somebody wants something, hey man, I'll drink Bud Light. Well, here we got. Here's your blonde ale, here's your blonde ale, here's your American wheat ale, whatever you want to call it. That's what we can give to you, right? Well, maybe not Bud Light anymore. Maybe it's now like Miller or Modelo, right? Crazy story, right? Like Modelo has now taken over Bud Light for the first time. Well, first time a non-American beer has been the top-selling beer in the country, like ever, right? Like gotta be ever, right? I guess until revolutionary times and blah blah blah. But in like hundreds of years, Modelo is now the number one beer brand in the country, not Bud Light. Yeah, 4.5%, crushable. I find the beer a bit disjointed. Like it smells so good, and then like it's really just like sort of like a sell to the masses kind of beer. Like it really doesn't have much character to it. Wish it did a little bit more in the palate with the guava, blah blah. Fine beer. Let's give it a solid 81. 81, yeah. Sorry, jeez, I hit the mic. Single in Havana from Barrel Monks. Curious to try some of the other stuff. Then again, I will say I don't think I've seen anything else on the market. I think literally the VIP beer and this beer was fresh, available. I feel like I maybe have had some other beer. I don't think so. I'm curious, and I wish they would send more beer up to Orlando and distribute it, because I would love to try out, again, a Belgian-focused brewery in Florida. Sounds very interesting. We know how that went with Saint Somewhere. If you don't know, Saint Somewhere was out of like the Tampa Bay area. He was making saisons in like maybe the 90s, but definitely in the thousands. And Bob Sylvester is definitely one of the saison progenitors of the United States. And unfortunately, that brewery didn't work out. Very special story. If you want to hear a cool story, then I highly recommend find the podcast How Not to Start a Damn Brewery, and look at the Bob Sylvester episode. Crazy story this guy has about starting like a tiny little saison brewery in the middle of Florida when craft beer was not very popular, and how that went. And unfortunately, the brewery closed. And but hey, there's the vintage bottles are still around. You can still find some Saint somewhere. And I've actually found one at Red Light, and reviewed it for you guys. But anyway, that's another story. Belgian beers, 2023. Who knew? Until next time. Cheers. Later.